Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Streamlining Your Apparel Workflow with VStitcher and Adobe Substance. My name is Greg, Senior 3D Specialist here at Browzwear. I'm really excited to have you all join us today, and I'm also thrilled to be joined by Tristan, Technical Artist and Solutions Consultant from Adobe, one of our key partners.
Hello Greg, and thanks for this invitation, and of course, hello everyone. My name is Tristan Ambert, Solution Consultant and 3D Artist Specialist here at Adobe. First of all, thank you to the Browzwear company to give us the possibility to present a few use cases showing you how you can best leverage Substance 3D in a digital workflow using VStitcher. I am really excited as well to share some specific techniques and best practices of our Substance 3D solution. For those of you who are not at all familiar with Substance, we will share after the meeting a few links and useful resources to get started with Substance.
Thank you for joining us, Tristan. To start, I'd like to share a bit of our partnership history. Adobe and Browzwear joined forces to revolutionize the fashion design process by integrating Substance 3D and VStitcher, combining our industry-leading tools to streamline 3D design workflows. This collaboration brings together Browzwear's cutting-edge apparel design software, VStitcher, with Adobe's powerful Substance 3D suite of applications, known for its advanced texture creation and material workflows.
For us, this partnership allows us to evolve in the fashion industry, to increase our knowledge in this domain, in order to improve our solution to fit with the customer requirement of these domains.
So today's session will focus on maximizing these benefits and integrating them seamlessly into your apparel design workflows. The key points we'll be covering are efficient 3D apparel creation, fabric creation and blending, graphics and artwork integration, and finishing touches in Painter and Stager. Feel free to submit any questions you have during the presentation, and Tristan and I will do our best to answer as many as we can via the chat. Just a quick reminder, today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll send the recording to you in the next few days, and it will also be available to view on the Browzwear blog and Browzwear University. Let's get started with our first workflow. We'll create a leather and lace digital fabric using Adobe Substance 3D Sampler and apply them to a garment in VStitcher.
Substance 3D Sampler is a great digitization hub to transform any physical sample in a digital material. In the next step, I'm going to show you how we can interact with this data using Substance Sampler and create a parametric texture using the data provided by the captive scanner. So now, let me show you a quick example about this usage. I retrieve the data provided by the captive scanner. You can see the base color, the normal, and the height, and I drag and drop directly this information into Sampler. Automatically, Sampler creates for me a first draft of this leather. As you can see, it's not uniform, it's not perfect, so I can use an equalize layer to create a more uniform material. Now the texture is more uniform, but not tileable. I'm going to use the tiling filters, and the tiling filters allows me to place manually my own seam. I can place some parameter to blur a little bit this seam. Just to avoid to see again this seam, I'm going to use once again the tiling filter and rotate a little bit my seam, just to add more confusion inside my texture in order to avoid seeing the seam of my texture. And so I make repeatable this texture easily using two same layers, the tiling layers. Now, if I want to play with the color of my texture, I can call a colorize filters, and the colorize filters allows me now to edit the color of my texture. Directly in Sampler, I have the possibility to explore all my channels independently. If you have a missing information, in my case I don't have a roughness and ambient occlusion map, you have the possibility to convert a data from an existing channel to another. So I'm going to use a height to AO to automatically convert my height map into an ambient occlusion map and play with the intensity parameter to adapt the intensity of my ambient occlusion. I can do exactly the same thing with the roughness. I can use the channel switch, pick the information from the height channel and send this information to the roughness channel. Then I can add brightness and contrast layers just to have the possibility to control the roughness information previously converted from my height map. Of course, don't hesitate to use the lighting from the 3D viewport to validate the behavior of your texture. Directly in Sampler, you can change the 3D model used to display your material. It's very useful because you can see your 3D material in another context with another geometry, just to be sure about the behavior of your material. Once you have changed the 3D model, you can adapt the parameter from your layer stack. Once you have found the correct combination of parameters, you can expose this parameter. In my case, I want to expose the roughness, the color, and the AO intensity. This parameter will be available directly into VStitcher after the exportation of this texture. Before exporting my data, my material, I want to add other metadata for this material. I can add a comment, I can add the physical size, I can add another field if I want, just to increase the knowledge about this material, and all this information will be saved inside the metadata. The Substance 3D Viewer is our universal 3D viewer. It's currently available for free in beta in Creative Cloud Desktop, and it enables to open and view any 3D file, so it's really convenient when you need to quickly share and review a Substance 3D material, for example, or any type of asset and 3D models. They can be reviewed by any stakeholder inside or outside of your organization, like supplier, whether they are familiar with 3D or not. For this use case, I'm going to blend two existing materials from Substance 3D asset. So I'm going to search my first material, which is a lace material. I'm going to search directly on this asset. We have all this material, and I'm going to choose this one. I'm going to click download to download this material. Once the material is downloaded, I just need to drag and drop this material into my sampler layer stack. We can see over here the material is added. It's a parametric material, so I can change the color, the metallic, and the roughness, but also the mesh scale to increase or decrease the scale of the pattern. In my case, I want to have another material to blend with this one, so I'm going to use a velvet. I'm going to search some velvet material from Substance 3D asset and choose this one. Once the material downloaded, the workflow remains the same. Just drag and drop the material, and automatically the material will be added on the top of my layer stack. We can see at the moment, Sampler tried to blend this material based on the height blend. So if I want to change the combination and the blending mode of this material, I just need to click on this icon. Then over here we have all the blending mode available. In my case, I want to blend this material based on the pattern, based on the mask created with Illustrator or other solution. You can just click over here, Custom Mask Blend. Then you see all the properties of this mask. The first thing that I need to do is to drag and drop a mask, an image over here. I'm going to search my image and drag and drop this image directly on this field. And the image is used to blend my two materials. It's an image, but we have some parameters over here to change the interpretation of this mask. So if I click Mask Parameters, I can change the tiles of a mask to increase the numbers of repetition or not. I can also invert my mask based on the image. I can change the position, I can add a symmetry, so you have all the parameters available to tweak a little bit your mask. You can use also with the mask balance to increase, to shrink or expand your mask. Same for the contrast. In my case, I'm going to set on 0.5. I have the possibility to click on my velvet material and see all the parameters available also for this material. So I'm going to change the color to have something like that and change a little bit the roughness. Now, if I want to send this material to Greg, I need to make this material parametric because maybe Greg wants to change the color, the size of the pattern based on the mesh imported into VStitcher. So I'm going just to expose for the velvet over here, for the velvet, the color, the roughness, and the metallic. For the regular mesh, I'm going also to change a little bit the color to have something like that. and expose the color, the roughness, the metallic, but also the scale of the lace. To have a versatile texture, I'm going also to expose over here the possibility to change the scale of the mask and also the possibility to invert directly the mask into VStitcher. Now I created this material, I'm going just to rename it. Before exporting the material, I can just check the parameters exposed. We can see over here all the parameters exposed. If I want to make this texture more understandable for Greg, I have the possibility to rename these parameters. I can just right click over here, click edit, and just add another name for this parameter. Click apply, and now I can export my material. Export as, give a name, and give the correct destination of this material. Then click export. And now Greg is ready to go to import this material into VStitcher.
Thanks, Tristan. Let's open up our first outfit we're going to be working on. These files and assets are all available for download for you to work on alongside or test after the webinar in your own time. We're going to begin by adding in the asset we have just created in Substance. We do this by selecting the drop-down menu on the fabrics, add fabric just like normal, and you can see I can just select a fabric, open, and it will open in exactly the same way as normal. Now we can also go to our libraries, and within our libraries in the drop down menu we actually have a starter asset pack for you with Adobe Substance which contains fabrics and artworks. Let's select the lace fabric that we saw earlier, and we can just either download or add, go back to our materials, and it will be added in exactly the same way as normal from our libraries. Let's start working on our dress first of all. We'll just go to our snapshots and load our dress snapshot. Go back to materials, and we can replace or assign all of the fabric with one of our lace fabrics that we see. Let's use the lace fabric that we just added from the library here. Okay, we can either assign individually, or I'm just going to replace all of my body with this new one here. We know we're using an SBSAR fabric. When we hover over the tile, we can see it here. A normal one will just have a color chip. So here we can actually see. Also, if we click here, you can see in the top right, we actually have it selected there as well and highlighted. This way we know we're working with a Substance file. Now we have some of the visual properties in from the Substance file. We can take a look at the physical properties as well. Now the physics, whenever we import an SBSAR, they will import with default physics. So what we can do is we can click on physics, we can click on the drop down menu here, and we can select a similar physics to what our style might be. Then we can actually export this as a U3M, and it will be saved, the actual SBSAR, with the correct physics as well. Now let's adjust some of the visual properties as well, and let's zoom in to take a bit of a closer look. First of all, you'll note that when we select an SBR, the settings on the far right are quite different to our normal physical and fabric qualities. We have the face and the back, but you'll also notice that we have our dimensions here. So this is really key when importing. So when importing, the default will be 1K. It does go up to 4K, which gives us really nice level of detail when we come to the final render. Now what we would recommend is for 4K, for the final render, and we'll see if we zoom in at 4K, you can see we get really nice details there. But when we're actually working and adjusting our custom parameters, we would recommend going to 1K or below for speed of the workflow. Now everything below this, everything comes with presets if they're exported with presets. So if we take a look at these, all the fabrics on the asset store will have presets as well. So if we take a look, we can have a look and we can say, we'll select the first one, the navy rib. And you can say that this one actually is preset with a scallop edging. So this one would be used for a bit more of an edge detail. Let's take a look at the golden one. And again, this one's used for an edge one. Let's have a look at the burgundy. Okay, great. This is an all over option. Now all imported SBSERs will normally have some presets to them. So below this we'll then have the transparency, and again we can adjust the transparency just like normal. And then below we have our custom parameters. Now these will be different for every single SBSER, depending on what type of fabric they are. For example, this one is more of a lace, and they have this pattern section there. We can say this is an all over, and we can actually even change it to be ribbon or trim as well. Okay. We then have our color chip. So for this lace, there's just one color in particular, but depending on what type of fabric we have, we might export with 2 or 3 different colors to change. And you can change them exactly the same way as our Adobe Illustrator plugin as well. So there'll be different chips for different fabrics. Nice. We then have, for example, the roughness and the metallic, and this is the same type of thing as our normal type of fabrics. It does the same type of thing, the roughness and metallic. We then have our technical parameters here. So we can increase, for example, the normal intensity. We have some other options as well to kind of create it more luminous and increase the contrast. But most of you will know the normal one. Now if we want to change the size, we can do the same thing. We can click on our texture tool with our gizmo on, and we can do exactly the same thing. We can kind of move around, or we can increase the size and scale like this. Again, make sure it's on 1K when we're doing this. We can also select it from the material here and either change by percentage or by width here to change the size. Okay, let's now replace this with some of our other ones that we imported. First of all, let's change it to our scanned lace option here. And again, you can see this looks great. And again, if we click on here, again, we have slightly different sliders. We also have 2 color options. For example, we can change the actual base as well as the actual velour type. Okay. And we can actually change the size. So let's bring this down a bit, hold it half the size, and let's see what it looks like at 4K resolution. You can see that looks super detailed. Let's just make the backing a bit darker. And you can see that when we're making changes at 4K, it does take slightly longer. Nice. Let's have a look at the other lace option. And let's zoom in again. Nice, so this contains a similar pattern that we worked on before. We can even actually, this is select to invert, we can actually invert this again, and so we get the inverse of the pattern. This looks really nice too. And again, we have all of these custom options that we can change. I'm going to leave it on this one for now. Let's also change the base to be a little bit darker as well, the lining color. And maybe our elastics that hold up the dress. Nice. Let's now take a look at the jacket style. So we can go to 3D and we can load our jacket. Go back to materials. Let's first of all assign the leather fabric to our collar here. And maybe the contrast details at the bottom. We can zoom in and we can see our really nice scanned leather option here. Let's take a look at some of the options it comes with. So again, we can replace the color. So we could adjust this to maybe more of a tan type tone. And we can also adjust the normal and the specular level. So maybe this is a little bit shiny. We can reduce that down so it's a bit less shiny. Nice. And again, we can zoom in, we could resize and scale, and we can also increase the dimensions when we come to the final render. Let's change the body fabric now to the polyester fabric we had. We'll just replace all of that. Now you can see we can select our new polyester fabric. You can scroll down, we can actually change the opacity so it's less see-through. You can see that if we go down to 0, it's going to be even more see-through. So let's put this back up to 1, so we're going for a bit more of a premium type jacket. Let's also maybe reduce the metallic and increase the roughness to make it look a little bit more matte. And we can actually then also adjust our color and tone. Nice. Let's finally go back to our snapshot and load our final outfit together to see what it looks like. Really nice. And great, we have our first final outfit. Let's move on to our second workflow. This time we'll show how to create pattern and embroidery materials and apply them in VStitcher.
For this use case, I'm going to show you how we can combine a design and existing material. Over here, I downloaded an existing material, and from this fabric material, I want to change the design. So I added over here a layer, and this layer allows me to switch from a design to another. So if I select scan number 1, I change the design, keeping the same fabric below this design. So I can change over here each time the pattern that I want to apply on this fabric. And I added another parameter, the color variation, where I can change the color that I want apply on this pattern. So if I change the color, you can see over here the color has changed. And now if I go back from another pattern, so maybe scan number 2, select another design, I keep also the same color previously changed. So I'm going to show you how we can create this kind of material easily with Substance Sampler. So let's go for the creation of this material. I'm going to create another material over here. And the first step is to download an existing material. And for that, I'm going to use my favorite website, which is Substance Asset website, to download an existing photorealistic material. I'm going to search a stretch polyamide fabric and choose this one. Click download, and the material will be downloaded on my computer, and I just need to drag and drop this material into Substance Sampler to import it. The material is imported. I can just decrease the displacement and the height. Okay, the material is imported, and my target is to apply a design, a pattern on this existing material. So for that, I'm going to drag and drop and import all this design created by my designer team. So I'm going to select the chase, the square, and the zebra. We can see I have the possibility to drag and drop several file formats. So I use PNG, SVG, and another PNG. So Substance Sampler is very flexible about that. Don't be worried about the file format. Just try to drag and drop the file into Sampler. Automatically, we can see over here, this 3 design has been imported into Sampler. Each design is saved in a dedicated channel. We can see over here the design chase, it's saved in the scan number 1 channel. If I want to visualize it into the 2D view, we can go over here below and select scan number 1. And now you see the first design. I need now to send this information, scan number 1, to another channel in the base color, for example. And for that, we have developed a wonderful layers called channel switch. So the channel switch allows me to pick an information from channel, an existing channel, and send this information to another channel. So in my case, I want to pick the information from the scanner, scan number 1, and send this information to the best color channel. And as you can see now, the pattern is applied. And I can go in the scan number 2, automatically the other pattern will be also applied. So I have 3 different patterns. So at this step, I can switch from one design to another. But if I want to update a design, how can I do? Using the SVG file format, you have the possibility to change the pattern. So if, for example, I right-click on this element, I can edit this image into Illustrator. So if I click Edit in Illustrator, automatically Illustrator, of course, will be called. And I can use Illustrator to change something on this pattern. So for example, maybe add another pattern, another shapes over here. So I can just change the color of these shapes, something like that, and save this new pattern. And if I go back into sampler, and if I select the correct design, so scan number 2, automatically I receive also this update. So we have a direct link with Illustrator and sampler. In my case, I don't want to have this symbol, so I go back in Illustrator, remove this element, and save once again. And if I go back in sampler, I retrieve this update. So it's very versatile, flexible to have this direct link between these two solutions. Other elements that I would like to change is the color. For that, I want to give the possibility for the next user, so for this use case that will be Greg, to change and edit the color for each of these patterns. So I'm going just to add a color variation filter, and the color variation filter allows me to set over here the number of columns that I want to have and apply on my pattern. And below I have the possibility to change the color of these two colors. So if I change this one, as you can see automatically, this color is updated. If I want to change the black color from my pattern, I just need to change over here the color number 2. And if I change the design apply on my fabric, so I go back in the previous channel switch, and select the scan number 1, automatically scan number 1 pattern is applied on my texture, but I keep also the color variation on the top of my layer stack. So I keep the possibility to change the color for this design as well. So it's very powerful and very versatile to have this combination of layer stack and parameters. About parameters, I finished to build this texture. It's time to send this texture to Greg, and Greg will be apply this texture on a garment. But before exporting the texture, we need to expose the parameter. So I'm going to expose the color account parameters to have the possibility to select the numbers that I want to select from my image, and expose the color 1 and number 2. I'm going also to expose the color number 3 if Greg wants to add another numbers of color. I want also to give the possibility to edit the design applied on this pattern, so I need to select channel switch and expose the input channel to have the possibility to select scan number 1, scan number 2, and so on. I can also go and select the existing material and give the flexibility to change and edit the roughness and the metallic of this material. And I can see over here all the parameters exposed. And my last step is to export this material as an SBSR. So I'm going to use over here export as, select and give a name to these materials, and export this material. Now I'm going to show you how we can create this complex embroidery. I say complex because we can see several effects material on the same artwork. For example, for the font, I use an existing material to create this effect. And for the embroidery, I use a different pattern design. We can see over here the top stitches effect, the twill and the satin effect for the base, for the different elements of the embroidery. So I'm going to show you step by step this construction. Let's start with the first step. The first step is the creation of the design, the main shapes of your embroidery. For this step, I will use Illustrator. Illustrator allows me to create a layer and apply a color for each of my elements. That allows me to split the composition and the design of this embroidery. For example, for the font, I have created a group and apply the blue color because I want to have only these elements in sampler and apply only an effect on these elements. So you need to split the design, the main shapes of your elements, of your embroidery. Now I love this composition and I want to export this element for sampler. So you need to export each element independently. For example, I want to export the font, so I'm going just to hide all the other groups. Keep only one of this design. Click File, Export, Export As, and select the PNG file format. I want to use PNG file format because I want to recreate the alpha channel. I don't want to create a white background in sampler. So that's why I'm going to use PNG. You need also to use artboard. Why? Because for my example, I created an artboard and the size, the resolution of this artboard is this one, 2K. So if I want to have a square image and if I want to have this resolution, I need to export also the resolution of my artboard. So I'm going to click Export, Export As, select Use Artboard, Export, and select over here the resolution that you want. In my case, I'm going to use high. You don't need to use an anti-aliasing for this element, and you need also to set over here transparent because you don't want to add the background. And click OK. I exported each of these elements over here. So now it's time to go in Sampler to create the embroidery using all this input. Okay, let's go now in Sampler. The first step that I need to do is to import the first element to create my embroidery. So in my case, it's the base number 1, this one. I want to create a font and I want to create a twill effect using this design. And you will see in 2 minutes that will be done. So I just need to drag and drop this image into Sampler, use this image as an image. It's not a texture, it's only an image at the moment. And I'm going just to decrease over here, decrease a little bit the resolution, just to save the performances of my session. You can change the resolution at any time. So based on your computer, don't hesitate to play with this parameter. And click Import. The image will be imported. We can see over here inside my layer stack. And now I just need to call the embroidery layers to transform this image into an embroidery. You can see over here, the embroidery is created in 2 minutes. In my image, I have only one color, so I'm going to set 1 to decrease the numbers of properties over here. The design of my embroidery is a fill because I want to fill everything about my images. And I want to change the color. So to change the color, I can click over here, custom color. And now I have the possibility to edit the color that I want to apply for the base of my embroidery. You can add some metallic effect to create a nice effect. And also you can play with the anisotropy levels. At the moment, as you can see, I play with this parameter, but we can't see the effect of these anisotropy levels. It's because by default inside the 3D viewer, we don't enable all the channels. To enable an additional channel, so in my case, the anisotropy levels, you need to go over here, channel settings, and just click anisotropy levels. And now the anisotropy levels will be applied and used inside the 3D viewport. And if I play with this element, we can see over here now, the anisotropy levels parameter is taken in account inside the 3D viewer. So play with the different parameters over here to create the nice effects that you want for the base of your embroidery. You can add or decrease the numbers of imperfections that you want. It's also a parameters available for this embroidery. Before going further with the next step of this embroidery, we can see in my reference, it's a twill design which is applied for the base of my embroidery. So to change that, you have the possibility to do that very easily. Go in the color 1, change over here the design from satin to twill, and automatically the design has changed. Of course, we can change over here the density of this design. Now I'm going to create the other element of my embroidery, which is the black circle at the middle. To do that, you will see the workflow will be exactly the same. So I just need to call the embroidery layers, filters. This one will be added on the top of my layer stack. Change over here the number of elements that I want to convert. So I want to convert only one element. And drag and drop the base image from my computer, and this image will be converted using the embroidery layers. As you can see over here, this element is converted. In my case, I want to have a fill and I want also to create an outline. So to do that, I'm going just to change over here this parameter, the design parameter, from fill to fill and outline. And automatically, the design has changed. We can see over here, the blending mode is not perfect. We can see over here some thread from the base black elements at the bottom. To change that, you have the possibility to play with the fill and height parameter. So you can go in the first layer, so the first embroidery. Inside the advanced parameter, you can change over here the position of your thread. So in my case, I want to have the position of the black area at the bottom. So I'm going just to decrease these parameters. Then I go back in the embroidery layers, the embroidery filter corresponding to the blue color, and just increase the height of this element, just to avoid to have the blending information for the height channel. Now I just need to change a few parameters, maybe the density, the imperfection, and also the color of my element. So I'm going to select over here Stitch Finish, enable the color, and now I can change the color of my thread. Change also the metallic effect, add some metallic effect, something like that. If I want now to create the top stitches element using my other images, I'm going also use the same filters. So I'm going to call the embroidery filters. The embroidery filter will be placed on the top of my layer stack. Select one because I want to convert only one element, and drag and drop my other image to convert this image into an effect. By default, the design is set to fill. I want to set on top stitches, and I need also to play with the height position to have a correct disposition of this image. At the moment, we can see the size and the density is not correct, so I'm going to send over here, I'm going to increase the density, and I'm going also to play with the thickness and the length of my thread. So to have maybe something like that, change the length, play a little bit with the thickness, decrease the imperfection, and change the color to have a white color for this top stitches effect. This effect can be easily created using only the same tools called embroidery. I'm going to continue the modelization of this embroidery. I need to create over here an embroidery for the font, and you will see the methodology remains exactly the same. Call the embroidery filters, set the numbers over here to 1 because you want to convert only one element from your images. So I'm going to drag and drop the font, not the typo. The font effect will be convert. I need to change over here the density. If I want to see the thread follow the shapes of my image, you can increase over here this parameter. If you increase the fill outline parameter, the thread try to follow each element of your image. So I'm going to decrease the numbers of imperfection, play with the height, and it's created. If I want to have the red color, I just need to click custom color and change over here the color of this element to have something like that. And add some metallic effect if I want. So as you can see, it's very easy to play with the embroidery filters to create a nice embroidery easily using Sampler. Now I need to use once again the embroidery layers to create the last effect that I need is use an existing material to fill an image provided by Illustrator. So over here you can see the innovate word is filled with an existing material. How can I do that in Substance Sampler? Easily using the same filters called embroidery. So I just need over here to search the embroidery filters. Once again, you know now this name perfectly, this filter perfectly. I need to replace over here the image that I need to use. So I'm going to use the typo image, drag and drop it over here, and automatically, as you know now, this image will be converted using the embroidery filter, so with thread. I'm going to change over here. I have only one element, so I'm going to set to 1. We can see another thing in my layer stack is a container called input1. If I drag and drop an existing material over here, automatically the material fill my image. So I'm going to remove the thread and fill with an existing material. So to have an existing material, I can use over here my default library available in Substance Sampler, and you can also use Substance 3D Asset to download an existing material. So I'm going to use Substance 3D Asset and use a polyester name to search the polyester material. I'm going to set on material, and I see this one. So I'm going to use this material to fill my image. I'm going to click download. The material will be downloaded on my computer, and if I want to use it, so I'm going to select the material and drag and drop the material over here. The material will be imported, and as you can see, automatically the embroidery fill the image previously drag and dropped inside my layer stack. If I want to play with parameter, I just need to click on it, and I see all the properties, the parameter of this material. So I can change the color and the properties of this parameter, and only this element will be impacted by this modification. If I want to change the scale of this material, you can add a transform filter and put this transform filter inside the input number 1 layer. So if I drag and drop this transform inside over here, now I can change the scale, and only the texture will be impacted by this transform, because this transform is inside this container. Now it's time to export this nice embroidery. If I want to export this embroidery, I just need to click over here, export. But before exporting this embroidery, I want to expose some parameter, because I want to give the possibility to Greg to change and edit the color directly into VStitcher. And for that, I need to expose this kind of parameter. How can I expose this parameter? For that, you just need to click the first embroidery, select the color that you want to expose, so that will be this one, and click on this small icon, this small pin. If I click on it, you can see a dot appear, a color dot appear. That means now this parameter is exposed, so I can change the color directly into VStitcher. If I click over here, expose parameter, I see all the parameters exposed for this embroidery. So I can right click and just give another name for this parameter. So it's a base color. Base 1 color from my embroidery. So if I change the color over here, you can see the color change for my embroidery, and the behavior will be exactly the same into VStitcher. So I'm going to do the same thing for each of these parameters. I want to give the possibility to change the roughness, the metallic, and why not the density of this element. I click on the second embroidery layers, and I want also to expose once again the color of the second element. So don't forget also to change the name to have a nice understanding about each parameter. So it's a base number 2, and it's for the color. Once you have exposed everything, you can just click export, export as, give a name of your artwork. For my case, that would be embroidery. Then export this element.
Thanks, Tristan. Let's open our second outfit, our leggings and crew file, for a bit more of a sportier option. I've added in already my melange fabric and my polyamide, and I've also added just a sweat type fabric from the asset store. Let's apply our polyamide to our legging fabric. You can see the default fabric comes in with our pattern already in. Let's adjust this a little bit. we can scroll down and we can change our channel switch to base color. This will just give us our plain melange type fabric. First of all, we can't necessarily see the melange, and also our fabric is going horizontal. Sometimes when we bring this in, this happens. All we need to do is click on our materials, the rotation the same as normal, and change this back to 0. Now, if we change our dimensions to 4K, you will see that all of the smaller details will then show up. And we're going to get our really nice marl coming through, you can see here. Now, a great workflow with this is being able to change each color of the marl individually. So you can see here, this marl now represents these 3 colors. If I was to change one individually here, let's change to like a dark blue. We will then have a dark blue marl with a black and also with a pink. So we can create these really cool marl effects and colors. We can also actually increase the fabric roughness a bit more so it's a bit less shiny. We can also, if we go down, we can also change the channel switch to be some of our scans. So let's just have a look at scan 1. You see this comes in with the repeat pattern that we scanned already. Scan 2. And scan 3. And again, all of these have their colors that we can change individually. Nice. Let's go back to the base color so we can keep our nice marl effect. And what we'll do is, now we're working for speed, we'll put this back to 1K to speed up. And we can change this back to 4K for the final render. Let's replace the sweat with our other fabric here. And you can see we brought this in as a really nice effect, but this needs to be smaller. So I'll select my texture tool, select my gizmo, and just make this slightly smaller. Nice. Now we've applied our fabrics, let's take a deeper look into one of our best Substance and Browzwear features, which is artworks. Before we add our custom embroidery, let's use some of our simple Substance artworks. Let's add a 1-color artwork to our crew. I will position in place correctly, and we have the correct width. Now, when we're applying our artworks here, if we have a simple PNG, just a simple 1-color artwork, we can actually change our material mode from PBR to Substance. And this is where we have our one-touch print techniques. So you can see my first one is emboss. And this will look super realistic. This basically looks like it's just embossed. We can also adjust the roundness of the actual embossing, so we can actually make it look a bit rounder and softer, or we can bring it down and make it look super sharp as well, like this. You can also increase or decrease the height slightly. What's important to remember is with these artwork techniques, they include displacement as well. So in emboss, we actually want it to look more embossed. So you can see this looks really nice and realistic, but if we do the V-ray, then this will include the displacement. And you can see this starts looking super effective. So that's going to look great on the final render. Let's take a quick look at some other options. We have emboss, we have an embroidery option. We just need to make sure we're changing the outline width down to 0, and we get a nice embroidery option. We can also have foil print. Now if we want to recolor this, we just need to make sure that we're changing our color blending mode to recolor, and we can adjust to change to any foil print we want. These techniques still work with multicolored artworks as well. So if we replace this now with our multicolored artwork, if we have a look at the PBR, this actually contains 3 colors like in Illustrator. And we can use our Illustrator link to actually change the colors and tones of our artwork. We can then go back to Substance again, print technique, and we can change, you can see this was set to vintage, but we can also set it to glitter, high density and puff print, for example. And we can still adjust to make this look more puff, for example, or to vintage. But if we want to change the color individually, we just need to make sure we're going back to PBR to change the color, each tone, to then go back to Substance again to see the technique in place. Now we actually have some other detailed print techniques as well. If we go to the libraries and look in our asset library, you can see we have our fabrics, but we also have some more detailed techniques. We have silicone shiny, we have sequins, we have high shine, embroidery and chenille. Let's add one of these to see how we actually adjust these in a slightly different way. So we add one that we like, we go to materials, and you can see that if we replace this now with our new one here, you will see that it comes in with a different shape. Now, to use these 5 or 6 more detailed artworks, we select our artwork, we change our mask input selection to custom mask. We then scroll down and you can see we have a custom mask input. If we select this now, we need to actually select our asset here, which is slightly different. And click open. The asset that we need to select for this, and we need to adjust our artwork slightly. This uses an alpha map, which basically means that the artboard needs to be square. We also need to have a black background and the artwork white, which will then be the actual artwork technique. And then we need to save as a PNG or JPEG. And when we bring it in, you will see we get this. Let's adjust this a little bit so we have a much thinner border and maybe without a filling pattern. Now we can adjust each color individually as well to match in to our really nice embroidery option. And here we can create some really nice details. Again, afterwards, feel free to play around with the chenille, the high shine, the sequins, and the silicone, just using the same alpha map technique. Let's finally add our embroidered detail. We do this exactly the same way as our fabrics. We add artwork, add the SBSAR, and this will bring in our artwork here. I can select our artwork and replace. And you can see that now this brings in our artwork we created with all of these different asset options as well. You can see we have slightly different embroidery techniques, and we can still change each color individually as well. So you can see I'm going to change, first of all, our center embroidery color. Maybe we keep that dark so we can see the lighting. My second base color. We can even adjust the font color as well. And even the artwork at the top. So if we make sure that all of our exports contain the options to change each detail, then we can actually adjust all these different techniques of our artwork individually as well. We can put all of our styles up to 4K now. Now we've finished our fabric and our artwork for the final render and final look. For our final workflow, we'll use Substance 3D Painter to create 3D assets. If we want to use Adobe Painter for some additional details and texturizing, we can actually export our styles in 3D. So if we click our render tool, then we go to 3D Objects, we will need to select Autodesk FBX. You can choose whether to include the avatar or not. I'm going to do it without. We select Garment Outside, we select Quads and World Stitches Together, Bake Textures, and also down in the new version we can actually optimize 2D space. You can say how big your pixels want to be. I'm just going to do 2K for now, and we click Export.
For this second use case, I'm going to show you how we can create this jacket using a fashion industry workflow. I'm going to export a 3D model from VStitcher and use a little bit Blender just to reorganize the UVs. After that, I'm going to directly import this dataset into Substance Painter and create all the effects that you can see over here, the top stitches, the zipper, and apply different materials on this asset. At the end, I will set my Painter project to Stager to create this kind of rendering. During this use case, I'm going to show you how we can blend different materials using mask and other techniques. I'm going also to show you the new tools available in Substance Painter, which is the 3D curve. So how we can create the top stitches, how we can create a zipper, and so on. After the texturing part, I'm going to show you how we can create some variation using Substance Painter and how we can also create some pack shot automatically using Substance Automation. We have developed a scripting tool, and this scripting tool allows us to create a template studio and reuse this template virtual studio for each of our jacket. So we keep exactly the same lighting, the same position of camera, and automatically this pack shot will be created for all these variations. Once the 3D model imported in Blender, I can check the material ID. The material ID is created based on the material assigned during the VStitcher session. Now I can just select all the components targeted by the same material, and I can visualize the UVs created by VStitcher. We can see for this UVs is not optimized. We have some space lost, so the resolution of my future texture will be less important, less precise. So to have a nice representation of my texture, I just need to reorganize this island through these UV tiles. So I just need to select all the UVs and use the S shortcut on my keyboard to increase the scale of each of these islands. If I want to have more tiles, because Substance Painter supports UV tiles, you have the possibility in Blender to create other tiles. So I'm going just over here, click Tile, New Images, and now I can create another UV tiles. So you can see over here the new organization, the new layout of my island. So now I just need to export this 3D mesh and import this new 3D model into Substance Painter. Once the data imported in Substance Painter, you have the possibility, of course, to visualize the 3D mesh, but also the UVs previously created. So now the first step is to assign and apply an existing material from Substance 3D asset. For that, we have developed directly in Substance Painter a bridge between Substance 3D asset website. So if I go over here, Substance 3D asset, I can directly search an existing material created by the Adobe team. I'm going to search Charmeuse Fabric, and I can visualize over here the texture. If I want to download it, I just need to click on the texture, and the material will be directly downloaded into my Substance Painter session. If I go back in my asset, automatically Painter target the new texture imported. So now if I want to apply this texture, I just need to drag and drop this texture on my asset. Automatically, the texture is applied. So of course, I just need to play with all the parameters of this texture. The first thing is the tile. I'm going to change the color, change the roughness. I can fine-tune the texture until it reaches the final visualization of that. we have applied an existing material, but you can also create it directly in Substance Painter, your own material. If I want to create a very basic metal material, I'm going to select over here my button and create a new fill layer. The new fill layer is created on the top of my layer stack, and I can over here see all the channels to change the visualization of my texture. I'm going to set the metallic effect to 1, play with a little bit with the roughness, and change over here the color of my metal. At the end, I have this material effect created from scratch with Substance Painter. Now, I'm going to apply another material, a velvet fabric. So I'm going to search once again a velvet material into the Substance 3D asset plugin and download this new material. The material is downloaded. I just need to drag and drop this new material on my 3D model. Automatically, a layer will be created. And I just need to change the parameter of this material. So I'm going just to change over here the color, the tile, and the roughness. If I zoom on it, we can see the material correctly applied on my asset. I would like to apply this material only on the color of my jacket. So I'm going to create a mask of this layer. So I'm going to right click on my layer stack, add a blend mask, and I press 4 on my keyboard to switch in the polygon field. The polygon field allows me to create a mask based on my topology. Over here, we can see several icons. This one is just to select a polygon per polygon, or I can use over here the UVs. If I click over here, and if now I select the color, automatically all this piece will be selected. So if you need to switch in the material mode, you can just click over here on the thumbnail of your layer. And now the velvet is applied only on the top of my jacket. Let's go to assign another fabric material. So I'm going to use Substance 3D Asset and search Madra material. So I'm going to download this one, and now you know the methodology. Just go back in Asset Library, and automatically the Madra will be targeted by Substance Painter. You just need to drag and drop this material to your 3D mesh and create a black mask to assign this material only on the part that you want, and create a rectangle selection to select all the part inside the garment. Switch in material mode, and the material is assigned. And now you know also the methodology. You need to change over here the tiling and play with the properties of this material. I need to rotate a little bit the texture to have something straighter. So I'm going to use over here the rotation cursor and rotate a little bit my texture to have something like that. For the last material, I'm going just to go back in Substance Sampler to retrieve the laser previously created using the Captis data. And I want to reuse directly in Substance Painter this material. So to send this new material into Substance Painter, you just need to use the connector. So I can click over here, Export, and send this material to Substance 3D Painter. So in Substance Painter, I retrieve over here the texture provided by Sampler, by the connector, and I just need, once again, to drag and drop this material on my jacket. Automatically, as you know now, a new layer will be added on the top of my layer stack. So I just need to play, once again, with the parameters of this texture. So I'm going to increase the tiling, decrease the height, to have something like that, and create a mask to apply this material only on this bottom part. So I'm going to select UVs and select these two parts. Go back in material mode and change the color of this laser. And now the Captis laser is applied on this jacket. Before to complete this texturing, we need to also apply the metallic material on this component. So I'm going just to retrieve exactly the same material. So I'm going to use the previous metal material created and create over here an instantiation. So I'm going to click instantiate across texture set and select this texture set to apply exactly the same material. If I change the color over here, now a link has been created between my texture set, so automatically the color change also for this part, for this texture set, for this component. So now it's time to finish the texturing of this garment, and the last thing that I want to add is the top stitches. To add the top stitches, we have developed the 3D curve. So to play with the 3D curve, you need to create a paint layer. So just click on this icon and a new layer will be added over here. I just need also to search the correct brush. The correct brush is a top stitches brush. Click on it and automatically the cursor has changed. If I click once, first point will be created. If I click another time, another point will be added, and a 3D curve will be created following my mesh. If I want to move something, if I want to move this curve, I just need to select the dot and just slide this dot along my mesh. Automatically the 3D curve will be updated. If I want to add another point to add more flexibility, I can just click on the curve and an additional point will be added, and I can play with the position of my 3D curve. So if I want to create top stitches along my garment, I just need to create additional points, something like that. If you have some imperfection, you can just add an additional point to add more information on this curve to remove the imperfection. You can click on this icon to see only the top stitches without the curve. Now the curve is created, the top stitch is created, but it's too big. So I can play with the properties of this brush. So I'm going just to change over here the size and see on the right panel all the properties to change the visualization of these top stitches. So in my case, I want to change the color and I want to change the type of the top stitches. At the moment, it's a straight top stitches. You can use the double, the triple. You have over here tons of presets available to visualize different category of top stitches. In my case, I'm going to use the double. Then I can change with other parameters to change the visualization and the puckering effect for these top stitches. In my case, I want to decrease a little bit the height to have something like that. So I can save my modelization time using this technology because I just need to create some curve to create my top stitches. At the end, you can see over here the final creation of this asset. All the top stitches has been created using the same technique, only with 3D curve. We can see the madra, we can see the velvet, we can see the charmeuse material applied, and we can see also over here the leather created with the captis. We can see over here also the zipper. The zipper has been created exactly with the same methodology. If I show you, if I click on my paint layer, I created only 2 paths, and each path allows me to change the position of the zipper. Now it's time to create the pack shot. I am a 3D artist, so I want to highlight all these effects previously created inside Substance Painter. And for that, I'm going to use Substance Stager. To send my Painter project to Substance Stager, I just need to use the connector. If I click Send to Substance 3D Stager, automatically everything will be packed together and sent to Stager. My project is added in Stager, as you can see, and if I zoom on it, I retrieve exactly that I created in Substance Painter. The zippers, the top stitches, all the effect and material applied on this wonderful garment. So now I need just to create some camera, so I just need to create my point of view, maybe this one, and click on this icon to create my first camera. On this camera, I can play with the focal length and other properties. If I want to create a close-up, I can just click over here to create a second camera and zoom on the element that I want to highlight on my garment, maybe this one. I can also create a depth of field effect, so if I want to enable it, just click on this toggle, set focus point, and target the elements that you want to target for the customer. So maybe this element. And play with the blur amount to increase or decrease the blur effect around this area. If you are not an expert about the lighting, you can use over here some environment light already created. So if I want to have maybe some Tomoko Studio effect, just select this image and drag and drop this image over here. Automatically, the lighting is updated. I can rotate my light and play with the intensity of this light. And if you want to add an additional light, some physical light is also possible. Just scroll over here on the top of the category and drag and drop physical light. The physical light is absolutely parametric, so you just need to place correctly the light, play with the intensity and the exposure just to maybe highlight the color of this element, of this garment, and create some reflection, nice reflection on this element. At the end, with Substance Painter, we have created several variations. We have created together this jacket, and I can explore and have the same camera, the same point of view for all of this asset. Now I have created the 3 variations of my asset, and I have created my virtual photo studio. Of course, I can create manually each rendering using VStitcher. If I click render and select the camera that I want to render, and automatically create a rendering for each camera, but I prefer to use Substance automation. So I want to optimize my workflow, so I created this script with Substance Automation API, and if I run this script, automatically this script retrieves the stager scene, the painter project, and analyze the data for me, so retrieve all the camera created and create a rendering for each of these camera. And I can see over here all the version, all the pack shot created for all my version. I let you discover the output from Substance Automation, the turntable and the pack shot for all the variation. Thank you for following me during this use case.
So thank you, Greg, and thank you, the viewer, very much for following us during this webinar. I hope that you have discovered tons of new features, and for the new people, I hope now you are very excited to test our solution. And by the way, don't hesitate to benefit from our 30-day free trial.
And a big thank you to you too, Tristan, and the Substance team, of course, and all of you for joining today's webinar on streamlining your apparel workflow with VStitcher and Substance. We hope you found it valuable and insightful. Thanks again for being with us today, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.